All right, so real quick, I posted that video last night, kind of getting into the fundamentals of my over RSI strategy. Go back and check that out. It kind of lays out like I said, the fundamentals, the basics of how this works, the rules and guidelines. And I said I would get into it in more detail later. So I managed to create a great example of why you follow these rules at my own expense yesterday in this Ripple trade. So yesterday I was kind of sitting around waiting for Ripple to bounce. And there were a few opportunities, and I played this one, and it worked great. RSI spiked into the oversold zone. I bought down here, and it moved up into the overbought region, and I sold up here. And so you'll remember that if you go back and look at the video, so what triggers the trade is we're spiking into the overextended region, and then the way we manage the trade is once we find an entrance point, we enter the trade. We're looking for the next spike in RSI, or the next pivot in RSI that's not in the overextended region. So this one worked out, so I decided to do it again up here. So I bought in, and so I bought in about right there and went long. And then what happened was price ticked down a little bit more, and RSI had some nice bullish divergence here. So I added a little bit to the position to average down, and then so according to the system, we go from our spike into the overextended region. Then we have price and RSI pivot right here at this point, and so this creates a nice clear trend line for RSI, and this trend line is the close line or the sell line where you would exit the trade. And so we can see we have a nice clear trend line, and then it ticks back across. So right here is where I should have closed the trade. That's what the system said to do. Close the trade right there. Again, this is the 3-minute chart, so this is a very short time frame, and this is just a day trading scenario. So I would have closed the trade, and then I would have looked for another opportunity as RSI moved into the overbought or oversold region. So if I would have played it the way I was supposed to, maybe I would have gotten a little bit of a gain, but I probably would have taken a little bit of a loss. And thinking back, I would have taken a little bit of a loss after fees and everything, because I didn't quite get in at the bottom, and by the time it was breaking across this trend line, it would have been a little bit of a loss, but it would have been a really small loss. Instead, I made this a lot more difficult for myself, and it ended up working out, but it's a great example of how the system can help you avoid mistakes like this. So I decided that I was going to try to average down and play it kind of more like a swing trade, which I shouldn't have done because I'm using a 3-minute chart. I was clearly entering a day trade, but I managed it like a swing trade. So that was a mistake. And I want to point that out to you guys so you can see kind of how this works in reality and the kinds of decisions you end up having to make. And even, I'll still make mistakes as well, but this is why it's important to have some guidelines that you follow. And not that you have to follow them like a robot, but when you're given clear signals, when the system is giving you this to me is a very clear RSI trend line. This should have been a clear signal. And I was sitting here thinking about, I was like, should I sell? Should I close this trade? Nah, I don't know. I see bullish divergence on the hourly chart. I've been waiting for this bounce. I kind of got impatient, just decided to hold my position open. It ended up extending the trade because look what happened next. Look how fun this is. Cool. So to recap, here was my initial buy position, and I'm holding this as it breaks down like this. So let's see. So what's that? It's a nice little 5% drop there. So fortunately, and this is part of the system too, but I managed my buys pretty well. Even though I entered the trade early and I didn't exit, I left enough runway to average down, and I did. So when RSI started ticking into the oversold zone here, I was able to place orders and order here and an order here especially. And get my average down to a point where it was reasonable. I think I was only ever down a couple percent, 2 or 3% at most, but that's still, it's unnecessary risk, and I didn't need to do that, and the system would have saved me from doing that. So I should have closed the trade there. I could have preserved my capital all for averaging into this, which now look, and this is exactly why I don't do this, because playing this longer than I should have cost me some opportunity on this swing up. So it still ended up being profitable, but my base average price should have been lower than it was, because I just wasted a buy up here. You see what I'm saying? So instead, I could have saved my capital for this region, especially since we're getting bullish divergence again, and then I would have just played it by the same exact rules, and bingo. So I could have taken this and just had a clean bounce here. So maybe that would have been like 1.5%. And then I could have sold here. So we have we created the RSI trend line. This is our close line. We tick back across it. Oops. So that would have been a sell. And then we see price comes back down. RSI comes all the way back down into the oversold zone again. So this would have been another place where you could have you could have entered a position here. We're getting plenty of bullish divergence here. So you could have, when the RSI closed in the so it kind of just poked into it, but it's still, you still have to remember, you're still expecting this bounce. You're still expecting, you have to know where you are, or at least it helps to know where you are in the chart. I was still expecting the bounce, even, and I went back and I actually reassessed. I posted it in the Telegram group, the free Telegram group that I just launched yesterday, which you should join. And I may have posted it on Twitter, but let's see. Let me pull it up. Yeah, so I created I went back and kind of reanalyzed the pattern that was forming and came up with an alternate Elliott wave count that ended up being a lot more accurate. So I was still expecting this, and I would have been able to, so seeing price tick down into the oversold zone, this probably would have been a position that I would have felt comfortable moving into, carefully, but moving into expecting a bounce and then getting it. So then we have some nice price action. So we could have, especially seeing, coupling this with, we start getting some volume coming in. These would have been signals to possibly extend the trade a little bit, but honestly, where I closed the trade a few minutes ago was when we moved up into this overbought region. So, miss a little bit of the top, but you get the profit. And so let me just mark this here. So this would have been the other trade. Signal. And so something like that. That's where I ended up closing the trade. And so this would have been a nice 4% gain. I ended up getting like 2% on it or something like that. So it ended up still being pretty good, but could have been a lot better if I would have just followed the rules. So I'm gonna end it there. No need to ramble anymore. Just a good reminder. Like I said, I'm going to get into more details on this system, but I thought how this was a good example of it playing out in real life, and kind of a lesson you can take from me for how to avoid some grief, and you can get more sleep too. I stayed up most of the night kind of trying to manage this. It wasn't fun. So yeah, stick to the rules and you will be stress-free.